Episode 2 today. Well, what a wonderful opportunity to present the next episode to you today regarding understanding and preventing substance abuse with special reference to alcohol abuse. We are tackling the substance abuse issue, but I'm going to focus in all of these 6 episodes on alcohol abuse in particular, but not ignoring the other substances. So my name is Jath, and it's good to have you tuned in here today, and I trust that you're going to, for the next 30 to 40 minutes, just enjoy the time with me. For those of you who haven't watched episode 1, please get the video from YouTube and you will be able then just to catch up. But if you haven't watched it, let me just give you an outline of all the expectations, the outcomes that I would like to see happening in these episodes. Number 1 is to provide you with the necessary knowledge and practical tools to address substance abuse related matters, in particular alcohol abuse. So that's the first part that we're going to focus on. And then, very important, is to address the underlying issues contributing to alcohol abuse that in particular we focused last week on, but I will keep on having that in mind. So if you just have a look at the episodes, so last week we looked at the contributing factors, episode 1, towards alcohol and substance abuse. So today we're going to look at recognizing the signs of alcohol abuse, and I would like to show you a typical profile of alcoholism, and I will have the privilege to share this with you backed up by scientific evidence. So that's very important. And then you'll see episode 3, 4, 5, and 6 that I will still have to address during the upcoming episodes with you. But so let's just jump in and focus then on looking at the issue of the profile of someone that struggles with alcohol abuse. So the signs that we are looking at. And what I want to share with you today are the 5 profiles of alcoholism that we get. And so let's have a look at the first type of profile, and maybe you will recognize someone, a loved one, a colleague, someone that struggles with this problem. And then in the follow-up episodes, then we will look at ways how you can address it in the most effective way. So let's have a look at the first one. The first type is the young adult subtype. Usually they are younger than 25 and they hardly ever go for help. They are the party goers and they just go wild with alcohol. And they often drink less frequently, but when they do drink, they consume large amounts in a single session. And this we already see at varsity. This we see also when young students are doing their apprenticeships. Then we see this binge drinking episodes is very, very common amongst them. And in my experience over the years, very, very seldom that they have ever reported for help. They are still in the denial phase, and it's actually very tough to help this group of people. And this is where education and awareness programs in the workplace is very important to target this group of people in particular as well, not to exclude them. All right, so this is as far as the young adult subtype is concerned. Then you get the young antisocial subtype. Now, this is more of a problem drinker. Along with alcohol, now we see some antisocial behavior, violence, bar fights, and those kind of things that's also happening, typically also in their mid-20s. And many times these people have an antisocial behavior or history, and also a history of other substance disorders that they are using. So it's more problematic, and these people are more likely to come from a family with a history of alcoholism and or substance abuse. And it's also more likely that these people then will also, during the early phase, might be willing to come for help. They are more willing to come for help, in contrast to the first subtype. But in the majority of cases, they are also very much in the denial phase. So this is where we will really see it's a problem amongst young people. Then the third type is the intermediate familial subtype. So now we see a person, part of a family, typically the middle-aged person who's abusing alcohol. And many times in this case, we will see that about half of the family history is also clouded in alcoholism. We see it, a lot of the people there in the family is also abusing alcohol. And we will also then see in this case that some of these people, if not most, will also face mental health issues such as depression. And just a point of interest here, if you really want to deal and help people in the field of substance abuse, I believe it's very important to have a very, very good understanding of mental health and also the different types of mental health disorders that play a role in alcoholism and in substance abuse. But that is just a point in the middle that I'm making regarding the intermediate familial subtype that we get. But let's go on to the more serious type, is the chronic. The chronic type, the chronic severe type of alcoholic. Now, these are people with a long history of alcoholism. It's been going on, it's been escalating over the years, and in this case, there's a high rate of substance abuse and mental disorders also present in the case of chronic severe type. And this type of patient, when they report for help at a rehabilitation center, many of them has already been admitted in a psychiatric hospital or vice versa. And the help of a psychiatrist and a team like us then is required. And when it comes to a chronic user, then that person will frequently experience severe withdrawal symptoms and as well as other health-related problems, but more about that later. And this is a group that is more likely to seek treatment. This is the group of people that severe, intense interventions took place and they realize they have to do something about it. But let me share with you now the functional subtype, and I'm going to stand still a lot today with the functional subtype, or usually we refer to them as the functional alcoholic. And this is the most common type that we will find in the workplace. And I think we need to focus a lot on this group of users today. And they are generally middle-aged, well-educated, intelligent people, and they have a stable job. They're very stable in their job, and they've got a good social profile that they have, and people respect them. And what happens here, these people drink regularly, but they manage to maintain their responsibility. That's why we call them a functional alcoholic. They can cope with their family duties, and they cope with the work duties, and you will not even know that this colleague of yours has got an alcohol problem, because on the surface, apparently, everything seems to be normal. And this is the group of people that's also often in denial about their alcoholism due to their functional lifestyle. They will rationalize by saying, but I'm working and I'm earning a good amount of money and I'm financially strong. Who are you to tell me, I have a problem? So that's the functional subtype that we are concerned about. But let me share with you a little bit of the demographics of this functional alcoholic. Usually, they are in their late 30s towards the early 50s that we'll see them. And as I said, they are well-educated people, and they hold down stable, high-responsibility jobs. And on the surface, nobody will really think in their wildest dreams that this person has an alcohol problem. Many times they have families that it's very stable on the surface. Everything seems to be very stable, and also in their social relationships, everything seems to be stable as well. And this group is then most of the time in denial about their alcoholism due to their functional lifestyle. And I think it's very important when we look further here today about the telltale signs of a person who's got an alcohol problem. We need to focus very much on this one, because this is the type of alcoholic that we underestimate, because the mindset that many of us have is an alcoholic is a person who's lying down in the gutter, the person drinks every day, they're drunk every day, and that is a myth. It's not the case. Then more about this functional alcoholic is that it typically includes those who maintain a semblance of normalcy in their daily lives despite their dependency on alcohol. And they often appear successful and responsible, and therefore it makes their alcoholism less obvious. What I'm going to share with you today is, if you realize that, or ever thought about that, you will get alcoholism in different degrees. So let's have a look at the different degrees of alcoholism. And if you look at this diagram, that the 3 degrees of alcoholism. And the way I depicted this diagram is in terms of stairs or steps, and it's starting with mild alcohol use disorder. And in this case, the person is drinking more or for longer periods than intended. They have unsuccessful attempts to cut down or stop drinking. And what then happens? They get cravings for alcohol. But here I need to just clarify this craving. This craving is not at this stage a physical craving per se, but it could be also an emotional craving. And let me define that emotional craving. Irritability, emotional overwhelmness, totally in distress, and you can't cope, your emotions are out of control, and then the first impulse is the craving for the alcohol. The craving, the physical craving, is more with the chronic alcoholic, but with a mild disorder, the cravings is more in terms of the emotional crutch that the substance will provide. Moving on then more to the moderate alcohol use disorder, then we will see that it's perhaps a mixture of emotional craving and also a bit of a physical craving. It's a bit of a combination of both. But here we see the continued alcohol use despite the interpersonal problems that they have. They don't stop, they carry on doing it. It's more intense. And what now is busy happening with this person is that they are giving up important activities due to their drinking. And now they even start using alcohol in hazardous situations. They are taking the risk for drunken driving. They start doing irresponsible things, irresponsible decisions, impulsive decisions that they make, which they will regret afterwards. But then, finally, we get the severe alcohol use disorder. And in this case, in this final intense stage, we will get the persistent desire, or we'll see the unsuccessful efforts to control the drinking. It's now totally out of control. And in this case, the person will spend a lot of time obtaining or using or trying to recover from alcohol the following 72 hours after the abuse. And in this case, the person starts to develop a very high tolerance for alcohol and experience even withdrawal symptoms. But more about this in the upcoming slides, that I would like to elaborate more on these points, namely tolerance and withdrawal symptoms, that I would like to highlight for you. Now let's have a look at the signs of dependency. You'll see I use the word dependency instead of addiction. Now, from a medical point of view, we will prefer to use the word dependency, but I don't have an issue to change or to use the word of addiction, but from a medical point of view, we prefer to use the word dependency. So let me show you a few of the most common signs of alcohol dependency that we see. Firstly, there's a pattern. Every person with an alcohol problem has got a certain drinking pattern that needs to be identified. And it's a regular drinking pattern, often daily or nearly daily, or weekends, or at the end of the month, or bi-weekly, depending on when they get their pay. So there's a rhythm, there's a pattern already involved, whether it's daily, weekly, every fortnight, or at the end of the month. Why the end of the month a problem? Because if that person gets his pay or her pay at the end of the month, they will just go overboard, and it affects their whole following entire month in terms of guilt feelings, in terms of financial pressure, because they just went overboard. So in this case, they consume alcohol in moderate to large quantities, but not necessarily binge drinking in this case, but it could be, as I just mentioned now. And this group of people, they prefer to drink in social settings, but may also drink alone. Let's just think, my African friend, and he will not drink alone. They will drink beer in a social setup. It's more a social thing and the social pressure. But someone else may also prefer to drink alone. So that, don't think that all alcoholics just drink alone. Some of them drink socially as well. And that's regarding the pattern. Another thing that we need to keep in mind is the behavioral traits. So again, I'm just repeating, again, the functional type is highly functional in their professional and personal life. So let's just get rid of this myth of a person who's an alcoholic that lies down the gutter and that drinks every day and is every day drunk. As you've seen so far, there are many faces of alcoholism. So, but one thing I have in common here regarding the behavioral traits is They are often in denial about their alcohol use disorder due to their ability to maintain the responsibilities. But what we already see happening is that this group of people are using alcohol as a coping mechanism for stress or to unwind. And that is a behavioral trait that we need to keep in mind when they start using alcohol for a medicinal reason, for medical reason, to relax, to forget, to numb, to give me confidence, to focus more, to sleep. When a person starts using alcohol for these reasons, now these are red lights flickering and serious danger sign of a behavioral trait that is about to escalate. Because very soon, or depending on from person to person, it will start escalating. The brain will get used to this treatment that the person gets, and sooner or later the person will realize, but I need more and more of this substance to make me relax or to forget. There's also psychological traits, and often these people experience guilt or shame about their drinking habits because they've tried to quit, they've made a commitment to themselves, I'm going to stop doing it, but now they fail. And that really compromises their confidence. And in this case, they may have co-occurring mental health issues as well, such as depression, bipolar, anxiety, ADHD, attention hyperactive disorder, and then in certain cases also post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, with regards to psychological traits. Another thing that is very important to understand about the telltale signs of a person who battles with alcohol is the increased tolerance, the metabolic tolerance that is now escalating. This means the person requires more alcohol to feel the same effects. And this is where many times people say, I can handle my drink, I don't get drunk. And what happens? They drink they consume a lot of alcohol, but they may not appear to be intoxicated, even after consuming significant amounts of alcohol. Why? Because they have built up a tolerance. And it's nothing to feel proud of when a person says, I can handle my dop or my drink. I can handle it. They can handle it simply because of the increased tolerance that they have developed over the years. By the way, females' tolerance is about twice as quick as males, just because their body is built differently. We see they build up a tolerance very, very quickly. And the process towards alcoholism, the time for a female is about twice as fast in comparison to a male, the average male. This is just average. I'm just generalizing here, but we see that when females report for help, the process was more speedy than in comparison to that of males we've seen. Then, apart from the dependency that's already been happening and escalating, now we will start seeing withdrawal symptoms. And there's two types of withdrawal symptoms that we need to become aware of. Most people they just think in terms of the physical withdrawal symptoms, the cramps, the shaking. But what about emotional withdrawals? And that is something else. The panic attacks, the irritability, short temper. So let's just look at more withdrawal symptoms: cold sweat, insomnia, enormous craving for alcohol, shakiness, irritability. And by the way, irritability is one of the top reasons or triggers for the process of relapse to be activated. And this is one of the things that we work so hard in rehabilitation centers to help the patient with that issue or that sense of irritability. Because that irritability, when it escalates, that restlessness, it is a severe trigger point that needs to be addressed. But more about that in a later episode. Apart from withdrawals, we will also see that such a person will start neglecting their responsibilities, and they may begin to show signs of neglect in areas such as their personal care, their hygiene, home maintenance, and also punctuality. They occasionally miss work appointments or important events due to hangovers or drinking, and slowly these people are losing control over their lives. That is as far as the neglecting of responsibilities is concerned. And a very common problem that we also see that you can be on the lookout for is rationalization and denial. Rationalization is when a person makes all sorts of excuses where they justify their drinking as a reward. I'm working hard, it's my money, it's weekend, I deserve it. I've been going through a tough time, I deserve it. So that kind of rationalization helps the person to justify their drinking as a reward, as I just said, or a way just to cope with their stress. And justification or rationalization is also a form of denial. And here they deny having a problem because they can maintain their responsibilities, as I've said earlier. So when we start seeing the people making excuses as a way to just build a wall around themselves, we call it a defense mechanism, then we realize the person has already got a serious problem, and now this rationalization becomes like a mental block. And even in rehabilitation, we have to work very hard on this point, because this becomes a trigger point eventually when they get discharged and they go into the process of relapsing, where they start thinking about and fantasizing about going back to alcohol drinking in moderation, and just to rationalize, but I would be able to handle in moderation. Then also what we will see many times with alcohol as it escalates, they start having social problems, social conflicts, strained relationship due to drinking, and along with that, there's the potential also for legal issues, driving under the influence and other legal related problems that will start to appear as well. That's legal problems that we also see, and by the time the report for rehabilitation, many of our patients have got serious legal challenges that they have to address as well. Part of the consequences, but many times these legal challenges could also be the turning point for them on their road towards recovery. We also see then physical health issues that they battle with and begin to show physical signs of alcohol abuse, such as weight changes, digestive problems, and also very much frequent illnesses that they get, and their immune system starts also giving them problems. And they also develop other alcohol-related health issues such as liver problems, high blood pressure, and a whole range of sleep disturbances as well. And these conditions may last for years and years, even after a person has been on the road towards recovery. Many alcoholics in recovery, they accept that there are long-term physical consequences as well. But the drive to live is worth it. To say, I'm rather going to stop, although I may face certain problems regarding my health after stopping, but not quite as much in comparison to someone who will be carrying on drinking. Right, then behavior changes. They become irritable, anxious, depressed, especially when unable to drink. And this is where mental health problems start escalating. They will start experiencing mood swings. This is very common, that these mood swings are so dangerous that we will look at such a patient eventually, and then this could be the start of bipolar type 2. So we are seriously concerned about these mood swings of the alcoholic and the changes in personality related to drinking habits that we will see here. And also with regards to the disorder of a borderline personality disorder, when that patient with that disorder starts abusing alcohol, it just intensifies that condition as well. But that's just a side note. That's behavioral changes. And I mentioned withdrawal symptoms, but I want to emphasize it here, like physical withdrawals, like shaking, sweating, nausea, anxiety when not drinking, and the emotional withdrawals like irritability and restlessness. And then the most common obvious thing for a person who's withdrawing, what are they going to do? Drinking again to relieve or avoid these symptoms. So with withdrawal symptoms, first, before we see the physical withdrawal symptoms, we will start to see the emotional withdrawal symptoms. And the alcoholic and the family of the alcoholic may not see it or recognize or acknowledge it as a withdrawal symptom, because they will just generalize, say everybody feels like that, and they don't connect the dots that this is actually withdrawal symptoms regarding the emotions. And then they start losing control. The person with alcoholism will have the inability to limit the amount of alcohol consumed, and once the drinking begins, they just can't stop. They just carry on, and it just escalates. They don't stop. It's out of control. And they drink more and more for longer periods than intended. And they will carry on to drink despite the problems. Persisting with alcohol use carries on despite knowing it's causing or exacerbating physical, psychological, or social issues. When this happens, that's a serious alarm going off, a red light. The person can't stop, although they just see they have no control. They've lost control over everything. And many times, they just simply blatantly ignore the negative consequences of drinking. And part of rehabilitation here in this sense is to enhance the patient's sense of self-awareness, to reconnect with themselves, to become aware of the negative consequences of drinking, and to understand themselves much better in terms of their personal problems that is escalating. Yeah, and along with that is the unsuccessful attempts to cut down. They're repeatedly trying to reduce or stop drinking without success. You can imagine what kind of a confidence drop down it will cause in this case. And while they will still experience persistent desire or cravings for alcohol. One patient once asked me, who's a chronic alcoholic, I want to understand the root of my problem. Why am I drinking? The answer to her was very simple. You drink because you're alcoholic. Now, because you're a chronic alcoholic, you don't drink because of the emotional reasons anymore. You drink because you're alcoholic. You are dependent on alcohol. Now, we're not going to deal alone with the psychological underlying issues that initially caused the person to start drinking. Now we deal with a medical, physical condition. And that's why they have unsuccessful attempts to cut down. And they have got risky drinking behavior. Everything then is out of control. And then, can you imagine in the workplace, in the mining industry, for instance, when a person has been drinking too much and now they have to operate on machinery. They may be sober, but they may have a hangover, and that could have a severe occupational risk. And interpersonal issues that starts to escalate, strained relationships with families, friends, and colleagues, and they just see the person lately is not themselves anymore. Everything has changed. They live in secrecy, and they hide the extent of drinking from others and become very defensive or angry when questioned about their drinking habits. So this concludes for today's session, episode number 2. In episode 3, I'm going to focus in particular on the role of the line manager. Once the line manager is now aware of the telltale signs, they see an employee, a worker, contract worker, whoever the person is, present all of these signs, what is the next thing we must do? So until next time, next week, episode 3, I'm looking forward to see you then. Thank you.